She told me in December, sitting at her kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug, that she'd decided on me back in February. Before the note. Before any of the pump meetings. Before the whole summer that ended up rearranging everything I thought I understood about coming home. She said she'd seen me through the kitchen window, standing in the rain at the shared water pump, holding a broken umbrella over a bucket of water instead of over my own head. And she thought that's either a very dedicated farmer or someone I want to get to know. I told her I was keeping the bucket dry. I know, she said. That's the part that did it. I've been trying to figure out how to tell this story for a while now, because the beginning actually matters here. If you heard the ending first, you wouldn't believe how small the beginning really was. My name's Nathan Callaway. I'm 26, and 11 months ago I moved back to Harlo, Georgia after 4 years in Atlanta that I still haven't found a good way to describe. The closest I can get is this: Atlanta paid well and felt like nothing. Good job, smart decisions, the kind of life that looks right from the outside and feels hollow once you're actually living it. I lasted 4 years before I ran out of reasons to stay away from home. That's usually how I tell it. I ran out of reasons to stay away. Ellie told me once, in that blunt way she has that doesn't leave room for comfortable half-truths, that running out of reasons isn't the same as having a reason to come back. She was right. She usually was. I'm getting to that part. My family grows peaches. 3 generations. Same county. Same red Georgia clay. Same stubborn streak that runs through every Callaway like it's in the blood. I tried being the one who did something else, went to Atlanta, got the engineering job, got the apartment, got 4 years older. Then I came home. My father took that about as well as you'd expect from a man who'd been patient with my choices for 26 years and hadn't quite run out of patience yet. Second day back, he walked me out to the east field, pointed at the irrigation leak with the kind of quiet satisfaction of someone who'd been waiting a long time to hand that problem to an actual engineer, and didn't say much else. I spent 11 months not fixing it properly, which is a small detail, except it's the reason I ended up at the water pump as often as I did. And the water pump is where this whole thing started. The pump sat right on the line between our property and the Mercer farm next door. Had for as long as both families had been in the county. Nobody really talked about it, but there was a kind of unspoken choreography to it. Who showed up, who waited their turn, who kept their distance until the other person finished. That's just how things worked at a shared pump in a county where 2 families had been carrying on a grudge for 40 years, mostly out of habit. There wasn't one big blow-up that explained the Mercer thing. It was 40 years of small stuff piling up, a fence line dispute, a falling out between my grandfather and Ellie's grandfather, some county fair competition back in '87 that somebody apparently never let go of, plus the general human tendency to keep a grudge going just because stopping it would feel like admitting something. Growing up, I knew the Mercers the way you know weather. Always there, impossible to avoid, never discussed. Ellie Mercer was 2 years behind me, same year as my sister at Harlo High. I'd seen her around county fairs, 4th of July graduations, with that specific kind of not really looking you learn early when you've been taught, without anyone ever saying it outright, that something isn't really yours to look at too closely. I knew she'd gone to UGA for agricultural management. Knew she'd come back a couple years ago to help out at home. Knew she had her mother's coloring and her father's stubbornness, or so people said. I didn't actually know her. The note showed up on a Tuesday morning, late May. I'd gone to the pump at 6 like always, and it was sitting folded on the handle, written on the back of a seed catalog page, in handwriting that didn't look like it second-guessed itself. Meet me at the water pump at 8 tonight. Nobody will know. Come alone. No name. No signature. But down at the bottom there was a little drawing. A peach, 3 quick lines, the kind of thing you draw when you want to be understood without giving yourself away. There were exactly 2 families who used this pump, and one of them was mine. I stood there that morning holding a folded seed catalog page, doing the math the guy does when he already knows the smart move and already knows he's not going to make it. I went home, didn't tell anyone, stuck the note in my jacket pocket, and spent the whole day pretending to think about the East Field irrigation while actually thinking about nothing else. At 8, I walked back to the pump. She was already there. Ellie Mercer, 24 years old, jeans and a blue shirt, dark hair down, arms crossed, an expression that was maybe 60% resolve and 40% the look of someone who's done something she can't fully explain and isn't backing down from it anyway. "You came," she said. "You wrote the note." "I did. You could have just talked to me at the pump like a normal person." She gave me a look, the kind that says only someone who's been gone from Harlo 4 years would say something that naive. "That's not how this county works," she said. "And you know it." She wasn't wrong. A Mercer talking to a Callaway about anything past the weather would get reported back to both families inside of 45 minutes. Courtesy of the small-town telegraph that had nothing better to do. So I kept my mouth shut. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out another piece of paper. An actual notepad page this time, folded once. "Before you say anything," she said, "I have a proposal. A proposal. A business proposal." I looked at the paper, then at her. "You left a secret note at a water pump to give me a business proposal." "I did. You could have mailed it. Your father opens your mail. Everybody knows that." That part was true. My father opened anything that came to the farm on the grounds that all farm mail was family business. I'd been meaning to get a P.O. box for about 11 months. "What's the proposal?" I said. "Read it." I took the paper. In the fading light I read a one-page proposal, handwritten, precise, a joint water management system for both the Callaway and Mercer East fields. A combination of the existing shared pump and a new drip irrigation setup she'd apparently designed herself. Split the cost between both farms, and it came out cheaper than what either family was already spending separately. The math checked out. I'm a structural engineer. I can tell when the math checks out, and this math checked out impressively well. I looked up. "You designed this?" And I want to be honest about that moment, because I remember exactly how I said it. The surprise in my voice that I hadn't quite managed to hide. It wasn't just that the proposal was good. It was that I hadn't expected her to be this specific kind of capable, and finding out who she actually was landed somewhere I wasn't ready for. I told myself it was just useful information about a useful person. That's what I told myself, anyway. "Yes," she said. "Over the winter." "When?" "Over the winter. I've been waiting for the right moment to bring it up." And the right moment was a secret note at a water pump? Because I knew if I sent it the normal way, your dad would shoot it down for coming from us, and my dad would shoot it down for going to you, and both versions would die before they had a chance, and nothing would change, and we'd both keep throwing money at systems that don't work. I looked at the paper again. "This is actually really good." "I know. You have an AG management background. University of Georgia. Graduated 2 years ago. Same as you're coming back." "Same as me coming back," she said. "Though I came back for a reason. No edge to it, just stated as fact, and somehow it landed anyway." The evening was settling in around us, the fields going soft in the fading light, a cricket starting up somewhere along the fence line. "If I agree to this," I said, "we do it without either family knowing we coordinated. Obviously. I'll tell my dad it was my idea, you tell yours it was yours. If they both sign off separately, it happens. And if they ask where the idea came from, you assessed the shared pump and ran some numbers. I did an AG review of the East Field's water use. We arrived at the same place independently. That's not technically a lie. It's a managed truth." She said it steady, looking right at me. "You've done this before. I've got 2 older brothers and a father who thinks every idea he didn't have first is probably wrong. I've been managing truth since I was about 9. I looked at her there in the evening light, dark eyes, total composure, a handwritten irrigation proposal that was honestly better than anything I'd put together since coming back. I thought about 40 years of bad blood on both sides of that fence line behind us. I thought about the genuinely ridiculous fact that I was standing at a shared pump on a Tuesday night agreeing to run a secret agricultural scheme with a Mercer. Then I thought about the leak in the East Field and my father's patient disapproval, going on 11 months now. "Okay," I said. "Okay." She took the proposal back, folded it, tucked it away. How do we talk about implementation? I said. Once we get the families on board. She pulled out a little pocket notebook and tore off a page with a number written on it. That's my cell. Save it under something that isn't my name. What should I put? She thought about it for a second. Irrigation consultant. Irrigation consultant. I repeated. It's accurate. It's very accurate. She picked up the bucket she'd brought, filled it at the pump with the kind of efficiency that comes from doing something 10,000 times, and turned to go. Ellie, I said. She turned back. Thank you for the proposal. It's genuinely good work. Something passed across her face, not quite a smile, just the close relative of one. There and gone before I could pin it down. I know, she said, and she walked back across the line onto Mercerland. I stood there in the evening holding a torn page with a phone number on it, and I had the specific feeling of a guy who's just signed up for something a lot more complicated than an irrigation proposal. I was right about that. I wasn't right about much else that summer, but I was right about that. I want to tell you the irrigation thing went smoothly. I want to say that because it would make the story shorter and get me to the parts that actually matter faster. What happened instead was about as typical as it gets in a county where two families have been disagreeing with each other for 40 years as a kind of identity. My father said he'd think about it. He took the proposal, which I'd framed as my own idea, based on assessing the shared pump, and read it with the deliberate slowness of a man hunting for the thing wrong with it. Then he set it on the kitchen table and said, "This looks like Mercer work." "It's my work," I said. He looked at me with 62 years of Georgia farmer experience behind his eyes and said, "The Mercer girl's got an AG management degree. She was talking about water efficiency at the extension meeting last fall. These numbers look like hers. I got to similar numbers on my own." He kept looking at me, the kind of look that carries 26 years of watching your kid fail to lie convincingly. "I'll think about it," he said. Ellie texted that night. Her texts read just like her handwriting, decisive, no extra words. "My father also said he'd think about it," she wrote. "Which means no." I typed back, "Same here. Think about it usually means no, but not immediately no." She replied, "Exactly. We wait." "How long?" "A week. Let him sit with the numbers. The numbers are very good." I told him that. What did he say? "Looked like Mercer work." Pause then. 30 seconds, which for someone who answered texts like she'd already thought through what she was going to say was a long time. "He's not wrong," she sent. No, I wrote back. "He's not wrong about that specific thing." Another pause. Then, "Thank you for trying. I'll try again Thursday." I tried again Thursday. My father said he was still thinking. Monday, he said the shared infrastructure would need a formal agreement. I said I could draft one. He said he'd need to review it carefully. I said fair enough. Then he said he'd need to know exactly who on the Mercer side was behind this. I told him the Mercer daughter had apparently had similar ideas about Eastfield efficiency. He looked at me. I looked back. "Eleanor Mercer," he said. "I believe that's her name. She's got sense," my father said. From a Callaway about a Mercer, that was about the highest compliment available, delivered in the tone of a man making a concession he hadn't planned on. "She does," I said. He called Walter Mercer, which I only found out the next morning when Ellie texted. "Your father called mine." "I know," I wrote. "Mine is furious." "Why?" "Because your father called first." Mine wanted to call first. It's a pride thing. My father called first because I told him it was my idea and he wanted to check it out. Mine now thinks your father is taking credit. "This is going great," I sent. She replied with a laughing face. Then, "Give it 2 days. Mine will call yours back, they'll argue, and then they'll agree because the numbers are too good not to. You sound very confident. I've been managing these two men my whole life. Trust me." She was right. I was starting to figure out that was going to be a theme. Both fathers signed off on a Friday, apparently arriving on their own at the same conclusion, that the numbers worked and whoever came up with it deserved credit, a question they resolved by both taking credit at the same time, In a phone call Ellie later described as the most exhausting 45 minutes of her recent memory. We started the work the following week, which meant Ellie and I had to keep meeting at the pump. Early mornings, late evenings, whenever the odds of either family noticing were lowest. We both admitted it was a little absurd. Neither of us brought up stopping. We met to go over the install schedule, materials, the junction points where the two systems would connect. We talked irrigation with the kind of real, engaged interest that I genuinely hadn't expected, and it made meetings about pipe fittings a lot more enjoyable than they had any business being. Up close, talking for real, she was nothing like the version of her I'd built out of 12 feet of fence line and county fair glances. She was funny, quick, specific, the kind of funny that doesn't announce itself, that catches you off guard while you're thinking about something else. She had opinions on everything and said them with the cheerful certainty of someone who'd already checked her work and wasn't worried how it landed. She asked sharp questions and actually listened to the answers, gave you her full attention, which is rarer than it should be and worth more than most people realize. And I noticed this the way you notice something you're not supposed to be tracking, completely comfortable being exactly who she was. In a small town where everybody's known you since you were 5, that's harder than it sounds. One morning in the 3rd week, we had about 20 minutes waiting on a fitting to set. Neither of us had anywhere to be. "Did you always want to come back to Harlo?" I asked. "No," she said. "I wanted Savannah. There's a coastal AG nonprofit I'd been following since college." "What happened?" "My mother got sick." She said it the way she said most things, plain, no performance, just a fact about her life. Not seriously, not permanently, but enough that she needed help for a while, and my brothers were useless in that specific way older brothers get useless when they've decided their careers matter more than the actual situation in front of them. She paused. "So I came back. Then she got better. And I stayed because the farm needed the management work, and because I'd started to understand what I could actually do here." Savannah started feeling like somebody else's plan. "You regret it?" "I regret my brothers," she said. "Not being here." She looked over at me. "Do you?" "I regret Atlanta," I said. "Not specifically. Just the version of myself I was there. Doing work that didn't matter, for somebody I didn't much like." "Why'd you come back?" "Ran out of reasons to stay away." She was quiet a second. "That's different from having a reason to come back." "I know," I said, and saying it, I realized the gap between those two things had been closing fast since a folded note showed up on a pump handle in May. Here's the thing about Ellie Mercer. She wasn't performing anything. Not the competence, not the ease, not the relaxed way she carried every conversation. She just was those things fully without trying. And being around someone who's fully herself without trying turned out to be a lot more dangerous than being around someone merely interesting. Interesting you can manage. Genuine is a different problem entirely. The county extension meeting happened the 3rd week of June. I went because the farm always sent someone and my father had a conflict that day. I was sitting at the back with a coffee when Tom Ellery, 28, farm on the south side of the county, by all accounts a perfectly fine guy, sat down a few rows up next to Ellie and started talking to her with the easy familiarity of two people who'd known each other a long time. I watched that for about 4 minutes. Then I identified the feeling I was having as one I didn't particularly want, and made myself focus on the extension agent's slideshow about soil management. It didn't work. Not even a little. After the meeting, Ellie found me by the coffee. "Good meeting," she said. "Informative. Who's Tom Ellery?" She looked at me. "Why?" "Just asking." "You're just asking in a specific way." "I don't know what that means." "You've got a face." "I don't have a face." "You have several faces. That one's the one you make when you're trying to be casual and not quite landing it." She leaned in slightly, voice low, the register of two people at a public meeting maintaining plausible deniability about a private arrangement. "You don't need to ask about Tom Ellery." "I wasn't asking about the girlfriend." "You were absolutely asking about the girlfriend." I looked at my coffee. "He's a guy I went to high school with. He's got a girlfriend in Monroe." We talk about cover crops. I wasn't asking about that. You were asking about exactly that. Nathan. What? Stop asking about Tom Ellery, she said, pleasant, like she was managing a situation that amused her more than it bothered her. Then she took her coffee and went to go talk to the extension agent. And I stood there at the coffee table and understood all at once that the irrigation proposal had turned into something a lot bigger than an irrigation proposal. And that Ellie had figured that out before I had. Which I was starting to accept was also going to be a theme. She texted that night, "For the record, I don't go to water pumps at 8 in the evening with people I'm interested in for irrigation consulting purposes." A pause. Then, think about that. I stared at my phone a long while, then typed, "I have been thinking about it." She wrote back, "Good. Then, tomorrow morning, pump, 6 o'clock. Bring the Eastfield measurements." I'll bring the measurements. And Nathan, yes, stop making the face. Then good night. I put the phone down and sat in my childhood bedroom in my parents' farmhouse and thought, well, this summer is not what I had planned. July in Georgia doesn't do subtle, and that July committed extra hard. The kind of heat that settles into the ground by 9 in the morning and doesn't leave till well after dark. Ellie and I had been meeting at the pump 6 weeks by then. The system was 60% installed ahead of schedule because Ellie ran timelines the way she ran everything, with a precision that made the schedule too scared to fall behind. We talked every day. At the pump sometimes, by text other times, once on the phone for 2 hours about a drainage problem that took 40 minutes to solve and somehow needed another 80 minutes of conversation about nothing related to drainage at all. Neither of us mentioned that while it was happening. I hadn't told anyone. Neither had she. Partly that was just practical. Telling people meant explaining, and explaining meant the families. But honestly, it was also because whatever this was hadn't gotten to the point where it wanted to be explained yet. It was still sitting in that place real things sit in before they have a name. Obvious. Present. Not ready yet for the grammar of announcing it. I couldn't pretend the pump was neutral anymore. It had become an early morning walk I took specifically because she'd be there. A destination that had nothing to do with water. One morning, second week of July, we just finished calibrating the pressure on the new junction, and there was nothing left to do but stand there. Dew still on the fields, sun just starting to climb over the Mercer peach trees, that early light that makes everything look lit from somewhere inside. She was leaning against the pump, arms crossed, reading something on her phone, not ignoring me. Just at ease in the quiet the way she was at ease in most things. I'd been watching her without deciding to, not studying her. Just, my eyes went there without asking permission. She looked up. I looked away. Neither of us said anything about it. But she was smiling a little when she went back to her phone. That was the particular torture of that summer. The things we weren't saying were louder than anything we did say. The possessiveness showed up properly the second week of July. Caleb Hurst, 27, worked at the AG supply store, had known Ellie since 4-H. He stopped by the Mercer place on a Tuesday with a supply order, totally normal, and I only knew about it because I could see the supply truck from the Eastfield where I was working on the irrigation junction. I watched that truck a lot longer than I should have. This part's embarrassing to say out loud. I was a 26-year-old structural engineer, watching a delivery truck from an adjacent field, because it happened to be parked outside the house of a woman I wasn't officially anything to yet. I texted her that evening. "How'd the supply order go?" "Fine." 30 seconds later, "Why?" "Just asking." A 4-minute pause. For Ellie, who answered texts at the speed of someone who'd already worked out what she was going to say, for minutes was practically a confession. Then, "Nathan." "What?" "You can see the Mercer driveway from the East Field." I put the phone down, picked it up, typed, "That's not what this is." "What is it then?" I looked at the phone, set it down, picked it back up. "I'll tell you at the pump tomorrow morning." "You'll tell me right now." 8 o'clock tomorrow. Nathan Callaway. Ellie. "Fine." 8 o'clock. Then, "But I already know what you're going to say." What am I going to say? You're going to say you like me. I stared at the screen. That's not how I was going to say it. But it's what you're going to say. Yes. Good. I like you too. A pause. 8 o'clock. Bring the Eastfield measurements. Good night, Nathan. I set the phone down, sat on my bed in the July heat, and did the only reasonable thing available to me, which was laugh by myself in my room, because Ellie Mercer had just told me exactly what I was about to say, been completely right about it, said she liked me too, and then signed off like it was any other Tuesday. Which it was. But it felt like a lot more than a Tuesday. At 8 the next morning, she was at the pump when I got there, which meant she'd shown up before her usual 6 and waited. Ellie Mercer did not wait around for things she wasn't sure about. Morning, I said. Morning. I brought the measurements. I don't care about the measurements right now. Okay. Say the thing. I looked at her in the morning light. Dew still on the fields. Sun coming up slow and amber over the Mercer trees. Dark eyes, total composure. A woman who'd left a secret note on a seed catalog page, designed an irrigation system, told me what I was about to say before I said it, and then waited an hour and a half at a water pump for me to catch up. I like you, I said. A lot more than makes sense. Given it's been 6 weeks and we're supposed to be running an irrigation consultation. 7 weeks. It's been 7 weeks since the note. 7 weeks. And it makes complete sense. The timeline's reasonable. You're just slow. I'm methodical. You're slow, she said. But accurate. I'll take that trade-off. She tilted her head. I've liked you since February. February? We barely talked in February. I know. You came to the pump in the rain with a busted umbrella, holding it over the bucket instead of yourself. I watched you from the kitchen window and thought, that's either a very dedicated farmer or someone I want to know better. I was keeping the bucket dry. I know, she said. That's the part that did it. I stepped closer. She didn't step back. What happens now, I said. Now we deal with the family situation, which is going to be a lot more complicated than the irrigation situation. More complicated than a secret water scheme. Much more. But I've been managing these families my whole life. You mentioned that. I was already planning for this in February, while you were out in the rain keeping a bucket dry. I reached out and took her hand. I want to be careful how I describe this because it'd be easy to make it sound like something out of a movie, and it wasn't. It wasn't dramatic. Her hand was there. I reached for it, she let me take it, and it was warm and certain and exactly the right size. She looked down at our hands, then back up at me, and the look on her face. I've tried to describe this to myself a bunch of times since, was the most unguarded thing I'd seen from her yet. Quick, warm, completely real. Not the composed version she carried through everything else. Something underneath that. The part she didn't perform for anybody. She squeezed my hand once. Now let's talk about the Eastfield measurements, she said, and handed my notebook back to me, fully composed again. We talked irrigation for 20 minutes, standing at the pump, hands still loosely together in the morning that was already heating up toward July. I remember thinking, this is either the start of something real or the most elaborate thing that's ever happened to me at a water pump. And I was glad it was one of those. Gladder it was probably both. The next few weeks were different in every ordinary way. Not dramatic different. The mornings just meant something else now. The texts had a different feel. The 20 minutes waiting on fittings weren't spent on irrigation anymore. We were still hidden, which was practical, but I was starting to feel different about it the longer it went on. The possessiveness hadn't gone anywhere. It had just changed shape, less jealousy about specific guys, more a general kind of wanting I didn't have clean language for. Wanting to be the first person she talked to. The one she texted when something good or bad happened. Wanting to be there for the parts of her day I was currently missing because nobody knew about us yet. I hadn't said any of that out loud. She noticed anyway. The late text started in early August. 10:11 at night. How are you? What are you doing? The kind that look like nothing and mean something. I didn't mind them. But I noticed the pattern, and on the third night of it I called her instead of texting back. She picked up on the second ring. I was working, I said. Sorry I didn't reply. I know. You mentioned the client call earlier. Then why the texts? Pause. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where someone's deciding whether to say the real thing. I don't like not knowing where you are, she said. You always know where I am. I'm either at the farm or the pump or occasionally in town. I'm not exactly a man of geographic mystery. I mean what you're doing, not where physically, what you're thinking about, whether you're thinking about me. I sat down on the porch steps in the August evening. Ellie, I know, she said. It's a little much. I can't help it. She exhaled. This is the most significant thing I've done with my life that isn't agricultural, and I don't have a good framework for it. When I don't have a framework for something, I try to gather information until I can build one. Gathering information about you means knowing what you're doing. I know that's not entirely reasonable, but I'm being honest about what's happening. I looked out over the east field, the new lines running clean where the old leak used to be. Tell me the real thing, I said. Not the framework version, the actual thing. She went quiet, a real quiet, the kind she gave to things she was working out before putting them into words. I'm afraid it'll end, she said. Before it's properly started. We're hidden from everyone. Nobody knows. And things that are hidden have a way of dissolving before they get the chance to be real. Pause. I don't want this to dissolve before it's real. Something happened in my chest I don't have a great word for. It's already real, I said. It doesn't have witnesses, she said. Real things have witnesses. I sat with that. Then we need witnesses, I said. Our families. Yeah. That's going to be awful. Probably. But you've been managing these families your whole life. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. I did say that, didn't I? You did. I'm holding you to it. Pause. Nathan. Yeah. I was thinking about you, she said. For what it's worth. The 10 o'clock texts. I was thinking about you and didn't know what else to do with it except reach out. Text me tomorrow instead, I said. In the morning, once you've had time to decide if the thought's worth sending. What if it still is? Then I want to hear it. Pause. Okay. Night, Ellie. Night. I sat on the porch a long while after that, thinking about a woman 2 years younger than me and considerably further along than I was on most things, who, for all her composure and her impressive AG management and the way she handled everything like she'd already checked her work, was scared of the exact same thing I was scared of. This dissolving before it became real. It wasn't going to dissolve. I decided that. Now I just had to make sure she knew it. We went to both families on a Saturday in late August. That wasn't the plan. The plan was a careful, staggered rollout. Ellie had a whole strategy worked out, a specific order of conversations. What actually happened was Aunt Ruth. My aunt was 68 and visited every second Saturday, and she walked the property line after lunch the way she'd done for 40 years. And she came around the Eastfield corner at 11 that morning and found her nephew standing at the shared pump holding hands with Ellie Mercer. Both of us had apparently forgotten the rest of the world existed. Aunt Ruth stopped walking. We saw her. There was a moment, maybe 3 seconds, where the three of us just stood there, nobody moving, like a photograph nobody meant to take. Then Aunt Ruth said, "Well," and turned around and walked back toward the house. Ellie and I looked at each other. "How fast does she talk?" Ellie said. "Faster than radio. We've got about 20 minutes. Yeah. Separate or together?" Ellie thought about it for maybe 2 seconds. Separate means we each spend 20 minutes arguing with our own parents. Then they call each other, and nobody's got the full picture. Together's faster. Together's also a statement. I know. You sure? She looked at me steady. I've been sure since February. Apparently, according to you. She squeezed my hand once. Together, she said. We walked to my family's place together. A Mercer setting foot on Callaway land that wasn't the pump was already, by Harlo standards, an event. I walked like a man with more confidence than I actually had. My parents were in the kitchen. Aunt Ruth was already there, which told me the 20-minute estimate had been generous. My father looked at Ellie. My mother looked at me. "This is Ellie Mercer," I said. "I think you already know each other. I'm introducing her because she's here with me. Together, as in the two of us are together." Wanted to get ahead of any other version of this getting around. My mother gave me the look mothers give something they've been waiting for and aren't quite sure is finally it, but are willing to wait and see. "How long?" my father said. 7 weeks officially, since the irrigation thing started. "The irrigation proposal was a setup," my father said. Not angry, just putting something together he'd apparently already been circling. "The irrigation proposal is excellent and is going to save both farms money," Ellie said. First thing she'd said since walking in, and she said it straight, no apology in it. My father looked at her. She looked right back, with the composure of someone who'd sat in harder rooms than this one and not lost any of them. "I remember when you were 5, my father said. "Came over here with your dad about the fence line. I gave you a peach." "I remember," she said. "I thought you were very tall." Something crossed his face. Not a smile yet, but the early stages of one. "You've got your father's stubbornness," he said. "I've been told that. I consider it a professional asset." He said, which was about as positive a response as he had available for something he hadn't decided how to file yet. We drove to the Mercer place next, Ellie calling ahead from the car. "I need to tell you something," she said into the phone. "When I get there, I'm bringing Nathan Callaway. Before you say anything, the irrigation system is working fine. This is separate." A pause, during which I could hear, even from the passenger seat, the sound of a man processing information at roughly geological speed. "Yes, Nathan specifically," she said, "because I'd like you to actually meet him." Another pause. "Dad, I've managed this farm's East Field water for 2 years and saved us more than we've spent on equipment in that time. I'd appreciate the professional courtesy of you listening before responding." A shorter pause this time. "Thank you. We'll be there in 10 minutes. She put the phone down. "He's going to make a speech." "What kind?" "The kind that starts with the 1984 fence line dispute." "That's oddly specific. It's his founding grievance. Once he's covered it, he can move on to anything else." "How long's the speech run?" 4 to 7 minutes, depending how worked up he is. Today, probably 6. It ran 5 minutes 40 seconds. I know because Ellie timed it on her phone and showed me afterward with a quiet look of victory. Walter Mercer was 60, had Ellie's dark eyes and none of her economy of words, and he gave the fence line speech like 1984 deserved a lot more attention than it had ever gotten. Then he stopped, looked at me. "Sir," I said, "the fence line dispute was your grandfather's and mine. I wasn't alive in 1984. Neither was Ellie. I'd respectfully suggest that whatever didn't get settled in 40 years probably isn't going to get settled by keeping your daughter and me in separate fields." He looked at me a long moment, looked at Ellie. She looked back with the patience of a daughter who'd had 24 years to learn exactly which silences to wait out. "You've got sense," Walter Mercer said, grudging. The tone of a man making a concession he hadn't planned on making twice in one day. "Thank you, sir. Didn't say I like you." "Understood. Come back Sunday." Driving back to the Callaway place, Ellie sat looking at the dashboard for a minute. "That went well," she said. "By what measure?" "Nobody cried. Nothing got thrown. In Mercer terms, that's excellent." I laughed. She turned to look at me. "Thank you for going to both," she said. "You said together." "I know. Most guys would have found a reason not to. I'm not most guys." "No," she said. "You're not." A pause. "My father's going to bring up the fence line again Sunday." "I know. I'm going to propose we actually settle it." She stared at me. "You're going to resolve a 40-year fence line dispute." I'm going to propose it. Actually, resolving it takes both sides. But I'm an engineer. I know how to draft an agreement. And I think that fence line's the only thing keeping two otherwise decent families from being decent neighbors. And that's worth fixing, she said slowly. Yeah. She looked at me a long moment. February. What about it? I decided in February. Watching you keep a bucket dry in the rain. I was right. She kissed me, quick and sure. Right there in the truck outside my family's farmhouse in the August heat. Not long, not dramatic. Deliberate and warm, entirely her own, the kind of kiss that's a period at the end of a sentence, not a question mark. She pulled back, got out, walked toward the road. I watched her go and thought about a note on a pump handle, 7 weeks, 2 difficult fathers, and a 40-year fence dispute I'd apparently just volunteered to fix. I'd been telling people for 11 months that I came back because I ran out of reasons to stay away. I was starting to think that wasn't quite the right way to say it. I think I came back because there was something here I hadn't found yet. I was right about that too. It just took a water pump, a seed catalog page, and somebody willing to write the note. September showed up in Harlo the way it always does in Georgia, with the specific relief of being a month that isn't August, the heat finally breaking at the edges of the day. Harvest was winding down. The irrigation system was fully running, doing exactly what Ellie's numbers said it would. Both families had settled into a kind of guarded non-hostility that, in Harlo terms, counted as a peace treaty. The fence line agreement took 3 Sundays. I drafted it, Walter's lawyer reviewed it, my father's lawyer reviewed it, both lawyers called it reasonable, and both fathers spent 2 hours arguing over wording that didn't actually change anything before finally signing it. 40 years, settled with the specific anticlimax of things that should have been settled decades earlier. In front of me, Ellie, both sets of parents, Ellie's 2 older brothers, who showed up radiating protective energy without quite knowing what they were protecting against, and Aunt Ruth, who considered herself the original witness and wasn't missing the ending. Afterward, in the Mercer kitchen, over the specifically awkward coffee that happens when 2 families who don't normally socialize are suddenly forced to, my father told Walter, "Your daughter's got a good head." Walter, not looking at him, said, "My daughter's got a better head than anyone in this kitchen, including both of us." My father considered that. Including Nathan? Jury's still out on Nathan. Fair. They drank their coffee in the silence of 2 men who'd each made a concession they hadn't planned on and were deciding whether to acknowledge it. Ellie caught my eye across the kitchen. She was doing the face, the one I'd apparently been making at her for 7 weeks, the trying to be casual one that doesn't quite land. On her it looked like trying not to laugh. She held it about 3 seconds before turning to say something to her mother that was definitely just cover. I loved her. I want to say that plainly because I've been careful with the language this whole story, and there's a point where careful starts being its own kind of dishonest. I loved Ellie Mercer. Probably had since somewhere around the night she handed me a handwritten irrigation proposal in the dusk and called it a managed truth, and I'd been working up to saying it out loud long enough that the gap between feeling it and saying it had become its own problem. She'd known. She knew most things about me before I said them. I'd accepted that as one of the costs of loving someone who reads people as a matter of survival. October was the best month. I want to tell you about it because it had everything that summer had been building toward, and it had it the ordinary way the best things usually arrive. Not dramatically, just consistently, day after day, the slow accumulation of a life actually being shared. We weren't secret anymore, and that changed things in ways I hadn't expected. Not just the relief of not managing information, but the actual pleasure of being visible, walking into the one grocery store in Harlo and not recalculating your route based on who was in which aisle. Sitting at the same table at the diner on a Thursday without both of you quietly tracking the room. We showed up together to the October harvest celebration, which in Harlo meant everybody already knew and had just been waiting on the public confirmation. Tom Ellery was there. I saw him across the room and felt approximately nothing, which was a real improvement from June. Ellie noticed me notice him and noticed the nothing. "Progress," she said quietly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. It's just time and information." "Is that all it is?" She looked at me. And trust. Mostly trust. The evenings had changed too. We'd fallen into spending weekend nights together once the farm work was done. Her porch or mine, depending on whose parents were less likely to be watching pointedly through the kitchen window. One Saturday early in October, we ended up on my porch. Long week. Harvest wrapping up, a couple equipment issues, the kind of tired that goes all the way down and keeps your mind running anyway. Ellie had been quiet most of the evening. Not troubled quiet, just tired the same way I was. We were on the porch swing, close enough our shoulders touched, and at some point she shifted, slow, the way tired people shift, and leaned into me properly, her head coming down on my shoulder. I put my arm around her. Not a gesture. Just the natural thing to do when someone leans into you and the swing's rocking slow and the October air's cool enough to notice and she's got her eyes closed and her breathing's gone slow. We sat like that a long time. Field sounds. The far-off hum of the county road. The porch light making a small warm circle around us. She wasn't asleep. I could tell by the breathing. She was just there, the way someone is when they've decided this is where they want to be and stopped running any other calculation. Her hand found mine after a while. Didn't take it exactly, just rested over it. Her palm warm on the back of my hand. I didn't move. This, I understood, was the thing I hadn't had in Atlanta. Not this exact moment. Not a porch swing in Harlo County with Ellie Mercer, but this feeling. Matching to somebody specifically without either of us performing anything. Being exactly where I was supposed to be. I don't know how long we sat there. Long enough that the porch light became necessary. Long enough that we both went quiet and found out the quiet was enough on its own. Eventually she lifted her head, didn't pull away, just turned to look at me. Head still on my shoulder, hand still over mine. Close enough that I could watch her decide something in real time. Her face moving through a few things before it settled. Neither of us was managing anything anymore. I turned toward her. She didn't pull back. I kissed her. Slow. The way anything you've built carefully deserves to be done. She kissed me back the same way, one hand coming up to my shoulder, holding on. Not rushed. Certain. When it ended she stayed close, her forehead against mine, hands still on my shoulder. We sat like that a while, not talking, just breathing the same October air. The swing moved a little. The trees did their thing in the dark. I held her and she let me, and that was the whole of it. That was everything that night. A week went by in that pleasant haze of something that's finally been allowed to just be itself. But underneath it, something was still pressing. I hadn't said the thing yet. I'd felt it for weeks, known it for longer than I'd admitted, and there's a gap between knowing something and saying it out loud that starts becoming its own kind of dishonesty if you let it run too long. It was October 30th when I finally closed that gap. We were on her porch this time. Evening properly cool for the first time that fall, the kind of October night that smells like the year winding down. The peach trees bare and patient on both sides of the now resolved fence line. She had a blanket over her lap, feet tucked up, legs across mine like that was just the obvious way to sit. Her head was tipped back against the porch post, looking at the sky. I was looking at her. "You're doing it again," she said without looking over. "Doing what?" "The face. The trying to be casual one. I don't know why I only make that face around you." She turned her head. Something in her eyes had gone quiet and careful and waiting. "Say it," she said. "I love you." Plain. No wind-up. Just the words. She went still. A real stillness, the kind with weight to it. "I know," she said. "When'd you know?" "August. When you proposed fixing the fence line. Nobody does something that hard for someone they haven't already decided about. You decided in February. I did. You decided in August. We both sat on it till October." She was quiet a second. "We're both slow. I thought I was the slow one. You're slower. I'm also slow. We're compatible in our slowness. That's the most specific compliment I've ever gotten. I'm a specific person." She looked at me. "I love you too," she said. "Since we're being specific. And since you said it first, which I appreciate, I was going to say it in November if you hadn't gotten there first. I beat you to November. Barely. It's October 30th. Still beat you. Very close, she said. I took her face in my hands. Careful. The way you hold something you've been careful with all summer. And kissed her. Long, certain, right? She made a small sound against my mouth. Not a word, just present, all the way there. When it broke, she didn't go far, just tucked herself into my side. Head on my chest, legs still across mine. I kept my arm around her, found her hand with my other one. The October night went on around us. Both our family's lights on in the windows behind us. The fence line, quiet now, settled. The irrigation lines running clean underground. I held her. She let me. We sat out there another hour without saying much. At some point she yawned, turned her face into my shoulder, and her breathing slowed, and I understood she'd fallen asleep, her weight warm against me, her hand loose in mine. I stayed exactly where I was. I thought about a note on a pump handle back in May. About a seed catalog page and handwriting that didn't second-guess itself, and a woman who'd been planning, since February, for this exact October. I thought about how you can come back to a place you've always known and still find something in it you'd never actually seen. Not because the place changed, because I'd finally slowed down enough to look. She told me in December. We were at her kitchen table, coffee, her hands wrapped around the mug the way she held things she was thinking hard about. I applied for a position, she said. What kind? That coastal AG nonprofit. The one in Savannah I mentioned. They reopened a role in September. I applied in October. I set my coffee down. It's the field office, she said before I could ask. Not the Savannah headquarters. There's a branch in Augusta, 2.5 hours from Harlo. She was watching me carefully. Did you get it? They offered it yesterday, she said. I wanted to tell you before I decided. I want you to notice that, she said. I'm telling you before I have an answer, not after. I promise.